blockchain. Things are about to change. Open up the gates. Systems get replaced. Bitcoin, decentralize the trust. Security, transparency. The network's run by us. Bitcoin.
Hello and welcome to the Bitcoin.com podcast. This is your host, Zach Doty. Today we have Sinclair Skinner here, the founder of Bitmari, a Pan-African Bitcoin remittance platform. Welcome to the show, Sinclair.
Hey, thanks, Zach. Thank you for having me, and I definitely appreciate your show.
Cool. So tell us about Bitmari. What are you guys doing in Zimbabwe? Zimbabwe is notorious for hyperinflation. Everyone there has to understand the value of a scarce monetary supply. Tell us about what it's like to be involved in a Bitcoin startup in Zimbabwe.
Well, I tell you what, they say that necessity is the mother of invention. Well, desperation is definitely the father. I think what's been great about working in Zimbabwe is that you can see how powerful and helpful digital currencies can be in the lives of everyday people. Currently, they have a cash crisis, lack of access to fiat, which has increased the demand for alternative means to convey value, which is, Bitcoin is perfect for. We've been around about a year. We've been getting some good support from the likes of Perkins Coie, who helped us out initially with getting all our regulatory ducks in a row. And then we did some small crowdfunding with Max Kaiser out of Start Join. And that's helped further us along as we bootstrap our way to success. Currently, we're waiting on, we got our first client about 6 months ago, where we're working with the second largest bank, a state-owned bank in Zimbabwe, and we're currently in the process of waiting for their reserve bank to approve the use of Bitcoin for remittances. The process takes about 6 months. We're a little past the 3-month mark, and we thought it'd be great to, as we wait on that process, we didn't want to wait to introduce and develop use cases for Bitcoin. And so throughout our workings in Zimbabwe, we identified an NGO called the Women's Land and Agriculture Trust, which focused on women farmers. And we realized that agriculture is the biggest economic driver in Zimbabwe. Those folks are the ones who are actually, generating revenue. Those are our potential customers. The biggest thing is to figure out how we can get Bitcoin in their hands and have them actively use it. So in conversations with our bank partner as well as the NGO, we thought of a farm accelerator for these women farmers where we can introduce technologies like Bitcoin as well as other things to help them be better farmers. And after identifying those farmers, we could probably even do more direct investment. But the biggest thing that we saw was that these are the ones who actually are generating revenue and making transactions. Let's get Bitcoin in their hands and have that generate real, on the ground usage of our Bitcoin and help us with making sure we get the right market fit for our product. So that's where we are now. We're about to start crowdfunding. We're using Tilt, which is a crowdfunding platform, and we're also accepting, of course, Bitcoin, Litecoin, and Ethereum as cryptocurrencies to support the project.
And it's kind of funny, tongue-in-cheek, what you're doing with your crowdfund is you're giving away these $50 billion notes or $100 trillion notes or whatever. You're giving away these Zimbabwe notes to the people that participate in your crowdfund. I think that's hilarious. So let's talk a little bit about the history of hyperinflation in Zimbabwe. You were there in 2007, 2008 as this hyperinflation kicked off. Tell us what was that like?
It was surreal. The notes went from, again, $1 million notes to ultimately I think it was quadrillion notes, and you had, again, basically bags of money that you were using to buy a beer or any type of transaction, and ultimately people more and more were started using U.S. dollars and rands in a kind of a black market type environment. So when you ultimately people were transacting basically off books using U.S. dollars, and it came to a head in 2009 where the government said, we're no longer going to print this ungodly amounts of currency, and they abandoned the Zimbabwe dollar and adopted a what they call a multi-currency regime, where they used the dollar, the rand from South Africa, pula from Botswana, and now they actually even use the yuan from China. And what that did, it really, brought value back into the transactions. And I tell people, even a 10-year-old child in Zimbabwe now knows how to do Forex. You give a 10-year-old in Zimbabwe $100, 100 rand, and 100 pula, he knows the value of each one and can tell you where to get the best exchange rate down the street. So it's kind of a real great use case. I think it's similar to some of the things we saw in Greece when they were having their problems, as well as other countries who've had problems with currency crisis. So I think we're at the right place at the right time, and Bitcoin is going to come to the rescue.
Come to the rescue indeed. And what we saw with Zimbabwe when their currency hyperinflated and the inflation there was just out of control. I think the inflation rate hit a peak of 79 billion% inflation rate.
Wow,
so it's just ridiculous printing of money. And when that happened, they had to switch to an alternative. And in that case, they switched mostly to the U.S. dollar. But now that Bitcoin is here, there's this better alternative. We're seeing, Venezuela, which is almost, the precursor to the modern Venezuela. Their inflation rate's not that out of control, but it's, over 1,000%, which is like getting close to the runaway train. It is a runaway train, and you're seeing Bitcoin adoption skyrocket there. If you look at local Bitcoins, if you look at, indicators of grassroots activity, it's really exciting to see that people aren't switching as much back to other fiat currencies. And again, when a country switches to another country's fiat currency, all they're doing is giving another country the power to silently tax their wealth through inflation. And so it's not a good thing to switch to another country's currency, but out of desperation, that's the only option people have. So you're in a country of starving billionaires, people that have went through hyperinflation, and they understand the value of scarce money, and Bitcoin has this fixed limited supply, 21 million coins total. How are people in terms of being receptive to that? And do you see some Bitcoin adoption already happening? Do you see any use cases emerging?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things you've seen is really interesting. As the current crisis is ongoing, people are looking at Bitcoin as the solution, among other solutions, and they're actually telling their government that. The government's talked about even going back to creating its own currency, and you've seen so many people coming forth say, no, we want a real alternative. And again, I think timing would have it, Bitcoin actually creates that solution that's working now, that actually is available. Freelancers and people who are dealing in international transactions in the tech space using Bitcoin now. And again, we have our wallet product and people are downloading it. So we see that this is definitely something that we see a receptive audience. But just like in any of these countries, there are bureaucracies. And what we've tried to do, instead of trying to beat the bureaucracy, we've tried to figure out how to work within these spaces and actually give a real solution that helps people. And if there's a way of doing that where we don't scare off the regulatory people and we keep the enthusiasm of the everyday person, that's what we're trying to do right now. So we don't want the door to close, but we don't want people to continue to suffer using failed things that don't work, like fiat currency.
Yeah, and there's no better country to see the example of failure, even to this day. It's like people think the hyperinflation just happened, back between 2008 and 2009 in Zimbabwe, but the failure is ongoing. And I saw in the news last week or a week or two ago that the entire Zimbabwe stock market had a 24-hour trading volume of only 79 pounds or $104. And so when you see that abysmal failure, and there are companies on the Zimbabwe stock market like, the Barclays of Zimbabwe, and there's all these companies, but there's no trading volume because it's a failed system. And meanwhile, Bitcoin's trading volume daily is at least 100 million, so at least 1 million times the whole trading volume of this country with 14 million people in it. So when you see that kind of failure, you realize that the legacy system is broken. And people, and like you said, I think you said one of the most important things is that Bitcoin is a solution now. It's not something that people have to wait for a solution. There is the solution, and it starts to protect your wealth from inflation, by holding on to a non-inflatable asset. So tell us about this pilot test, and you said it's getting started right away. You're going to be funding 100 farmers, and what can they do with that Bitcoin that they're gonna get from you? So this is a gift from you?
Yes, so it's actually in a real way an investment in some of the farmers that are already working hard and actually trying to ensure food security in the country and generate revenue. What we want to do is give them more tools in their toolkit. Right now, they're very limited and don't have the exposure that they need. And as far as our ultimate model is a remittance play, these are the type of users who will be using our product. So our thing is to get Bitcoin in their hand sooner than later and allow them to use it on transactions that they need to use currently, and that's inputs for their farms. So the upcoming growing season starts in December, late November, and what we're doing is we're putting together a women's farm accelerator, if you will. We're working with technical assistants as well as project managers and real experts in this particular field that allow us to help these farmers take what they're doing now and accelerate their development. And one of the tools that they're going to use is Bitcoin, where we can actually distribute the value of $150 to 100 farmers in a very short amount of time, almost free. So that being the case, and actually track the transactions with a voucher system so that when they redeem their supplies, we'll be able to keep up with their, the transactions, which is something that NGOs oftentimes find it hard to do in developing countries because many of these farmers are unbanked. So we're able to do these things using the blockchain, using Bitcoin technology, and that value add is something that we see these particular entrepreneurs, if you will, farmers, being the ones that can show the best use cases for Bitcoin in this country.
And so this pilot test is kind of a stepping stone as you're waiting for the whole regulatory interface to continue and develop, as you're waiting for more approval from the regulators in the space. You're trying to get involved with this basically short-term stepping stone in towards getting these people using Bitcoin. Is that the goal?
Right. When we talk to people about Bitcoin and they tell you who are your biggest competitors or what are your biggest challenges, and we always say it's not another Bitcoin company. It's not even another financial service. It's actually just adoption. User adoption is our biggest hurdle, and so we're not going to wait to do that. We're going to make sure we try to introduce as many people who will listen to this incredible technology. And what's great about places like Zimbabwe, when you talk to the person on the street, they might have heard of a Bitcoin, but they never thought they would even have an opportunity to use it until 20 years from now. You're dealing with populations that are used to getting technology late, not early. And when you present them the fact that they can use it now, and it's an open source technology, and they can download this and start using it almost immediately, there's a level of excitement that we've received. And then you couple that where we're saying that, look, we're going to actually give these investments of monies to these farmers. They're excited. And so now it's about taking that excitement and carrying out the plan. So we're going to give them the $150 worth of Bitcoin. There are supplies like, maize seed, chicks for those who are doing poultry, fertilizer, a host of inputs that they need. And we're working with the local suppliers who are going to actually pre-fund accounts so that when the farmer comes in, they're basically using their Bitcoin as a way to redeem the supplies from that account. And that, again, that transaction allows them to take the Bitcoin from their wallet that they receive, and they use that Bitcoin in order to redeem the actual supplies. And now we have people who actually been familiar with the transaction. It's not scary. It's not something that's foreign. They know how to do that. And now, once we get the regulatory hurdles cleared, or even as we do that, you got people who are now demanding, more use of this and awareness of this. And that's what we see. We're working with the folks where they are instead of trying to work with them where we want them to be.
Now, you identify yourself as Pan-African. Are there other African countries that you're looking to expand into beyond Zimbabwe?
Yeah, we're looking at Namibia. We've done some activities in Namibia, South Africa, and the southern region of Africa is where we looked at as a focal point, because there's lots of trade. It's a trading block. So even though Africa has 54 countries, there are trading blocks that do more transactions than other countries. So if we're looking at trying to eliminate the borders in Africa and come up with a universal currency, and there was a big push through the Organization of African Unity back in the day for a universal United States of Africa currency. And that whole process was delayed and stopped ultimately because of politics. And what we tell people, what politics fails in, technology can be incredible in. And because of the fact that this technology is better than other currencies, people will use it. So we're targeting Zimbabwe as our first use case, but we've already had people in about 12 other countries that are downloading our wallet, as well as we've already had initial conversations with financial institutions and users in about 3 other countries. So once we nail this MVP and get the right market fit in Zimbabwe, we're going to expand throughout the southern region of Africa and move beyond that. And we're using indigenous languages in our wallet. So oftentimes we talk about Africa as a great use case for Bitcoin, but we still come at it in a very westernized way. We want to make it local. We want the regular, brothers and sisters on the street to be able to have access to this product, because Bitcoin is not that complicated in that regard. So with us trying to make it so that, again, we're using indigenous languages, working with farmers, the people who are the actual backbone of most of these developing economies, we see that that's the best way to develop the right market fit and then come up with a use case that is scalable, and we can grow from there.
So your operations are based there. Your development team is based in Zimbabwe. So you're supporting the local currency in a number of ways. Okay, awesome. Tell us about the different currencies that are at play in that economy currently. So it's a multi-currency economy right now. How much of that currency is made up of dollars versus other currencies, U.S. dollars?
So the U.S. dollar is king. So one of the problems with currency, people from other countries would actually go use their ATMs and pull out dollars. So since they were using dollars as their reserve currency, even though we're a multi-currency regime, people from local jurisdictions would actually come to Zimbabwe and pull out dollars. So they've had a big run on dollars. But as a country where you go to a local grocery store and pay for something with $5, you could receive your change back in rands and pula. So it's very fluid. So you can come in with rands and somebody will give you dollars and change. And this is all legal tender in this country.
How many currencies are legal tender?
I'd say at least 4. I know the U.S. dollar, the Botswana pula, the South African rand, the Chinese yuan, and I want to say that the British pound are all currencies that you can use, and they're legal, and you can go to a store and transact with them.
That sounds like a mess. And again, I think Bitcoin stands out as being like the solution to the fragmentation in the global economy. I think one of the biggest weak points of the current global economy is how fragmented it is and how difficult it is to almost speak another language when you want to speak value with somebody that's not of your geography. And of course, here we're talking about people that are of the same geography having 4 different languages. And so Bitcoin is the global standard that's going to say, hey, this is one universal language for value, and you can use it everywhere, and you can order something from across the world without transferring, without converting, without forex fees, without all of these intermediate steps.
Yeah, and the thing you said before, and you don't have to worry about currency manipulation like you have with these other issues. Not only using the dollar is problematic, but almost all African currencies are manipulated by Western central banks. I mean, in the Francophone countries, the CFA is based on the French Reserve Bank, where most of the reserve currency is held in France. So, or even if you look at in Kenya, where they use the sterling, all these things are based on European markets and are manipulated. There's no real sovereign currency in Africa. In Malawi, they have the Malawian kwacha. I mean, who wants a kwacha? So at the end of the day, there's more fiction that's being propagated through these fiat currencies than actual real value. And when you tell them that they can use something like Bitcoin, where it can't be manipulated by your former colonial masters or by people with nefarious interests, this is actually based on the fundamentals of the market of supply and demand. Now you don't have to politicize currency, and that's what we're dealing with right now. People's economies are manipulated, and that's we're again I'm. That the liberty and the sovereignty that Bitcoin provides individuals and countries is amazing. And I think of all the places, Africa, who's never really had true autonomy in their economies, Bitcoin is a real revolution. I mean, it's not militarism, it's not politics. Technology is going to do more to free people in Africa than any NGO aid program. So it's really, I feel very proud to be in the space where, a technology like Bitcoin is available to introduce to folks that have never heard of anything like this and free them.
It is freedom. Well, cool. It's exciting to see Bitcoin take off in cash economies for unbanked. I mean, this is, at the end of the day, this is the killer app for Bitcoin that changes people's lives. Like, Bitcoin has a lot of killer apps. It's programmable, it's the store of value, but at the end of the day, I mean, to see Bitcoin go into cash economies where people were starving billionaires and turn them into people that can maintain and transact and conduct business without depending on a broken, flawed system is really cool. And to see the financial inclusion that comes out of this. These people, without access to a bank account, probably couldn't conduct international transactions without outrageous middleman fees in the double-digit percentages. And so now we're seeing the true technology for financial inclusion emerge, which is Bitcoin. And this is exciting. I'm been watching in Venezuela. If you look at coin.dance, you can see some charts by country from local Bitcoins, and you can look at Venezuela and see the adoption skyrocket as people are trying to get out of their local currency and get into something that has something behind it. It has mathematical guarantees. Well, thank you so much, Sinclair, for joining us. Again, this is Sinclair Skinner with Bitmari. You can go to Bitmari.com. The link will be below the podcast in YouTube. And thanks so much for joining us.
All right, thank you, Zach.
For more episodes, go to Bitcoin.com/podcast.
Welcome to the blockchain. Things are about to change. Open